Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Wild Woman podcast. I have the enigmatic, I don't know why that word, but the beautiful Liz Costa back with me. And I just looked today and I said, oh my God, this is a part four. So it
Yeah,
must be a year or more since we spoke. And so many people have said to me, when are you, I hope don't take this now, this is a compliment, Liz, when are you having that woman with the lovely hair, with the curly hair back on? So that's, so I can't think of her name, but her beautiful hair. So she's back on today with me for a part four, and I'm just so grateful. It's been such a journey for me, and I know you, the listeners, because I hear back from everyone. Liz just has a beautiful way of sharing sort of how she tracks or moves with what's happening in this evolution that we're going through on the planet. And I'm just going to ask her, please do firstly look back if you haven't at any of the interviews I've done with her over the last year. They're there on my channel, and there's so much insight that is so, if you're listening to it, it's relevant to you at the time you're listening to it. I think all of this information is very timeless, depending on where you're at in your own stage of life. So Liz, very much a big welcome back. Thank you for giving me
you.
your time today. It's deeply appreciated because I know you're so busy and you're always on the move.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure and quite an honor actually to be asked back.
Thank you. And we're no commenting on both of us with our lovely colors today, didn't just intuitively picked. So there's something creative in the air,
Yeah.
something bubbling up in the,
Mm,
isn't there for sure?
yeah.
Maybe just give a little short intro, Liz, to what you do. And I know this work is very private for you. You never really have broadcast it, but just to give a little short summation for people who are new to you, please.
Right. So I had a near-death experience when I was young, and in that experience, I was uh, kind of given my past memories back. And also it seemed to open up some kind of a channel between me and the planetary consciousness is the best way for me to describe it. And as a result, for the past 30 plus years, I have been traveling the world, being guided fully guided. There's no part of it that's done from a place of research, and um, helping the ley lines, the volcanic lines, the connection, the grid that we have has been had been. Of course, this is past tense now because it's everything's shifting now. We have a new grid, so it's very different. But for all of these years, I've been kind of helping to clear certain parts of the world where certain events occurred, and it's everything that we have in how we function as humans comes from the grid. So if the grid is messed with in some way, then we get distorted information from the planet. And so and I'm sure there's many more people like me, but I am a soul trader, if you will. And so it's been quite a journey because I never know when I'm going to be asked to go somewhere, and it's a very specific personal process how I know where to go. And I'm often don't have any idea why, or I'll be sent to a country and not know where in that country. It's a very fascinating unfolding. I can never have more than the next step. So the amount of trust in this process is truly extraordinary. There was a lot of learning curve in the beginning, but now I we have a good relationship, and I really feel it, and I know. And since the new grid has come online, and we now have a more balanced male feminine in the new grid, which is really recent. uh,
Yes. Sorry, you mentioned that on the last,
yeah,
I think it was in December, that the masculine energy, was it, had sort of the more, am I right
yeah,
in saying that had sort of been come into the grid around
anchored
that
into the
time?
grid,
Yeah.
exactly. And the feminine had done that in 2017, but the masculine only very recently has. And it'll be now that we'll start seeing a lot of the structures that were built on an unhealthy patriarchal energetic scheme start to collapse. And that's pretty much everything in our the last couple of thousand years. The whole Piscean age has been a patriarchal age, but it has been manipulated so that it hasn't been a healthy masculine. It has been a very unhealthy masculine and a suppression of the healthy feminine. So the unhealthy feminine and the unhealthy masculine has had free reign for this period of times, and we can all see the result of that. Yeah. And all of that is changing. It's a very positive move forward. However, the structures and the way of life that we've created are built on these unhealthy structures. So all of that has to collapse as the newer, healthier, more balanced ones are coming into play. So both of them are happening simultaneously. The collapse and the destruction is far more dramatic, and so it holds people the tension really strongly, right? And everyone is really in a panic. But my suggestion is to hold that stuff as lightly as possible. It's inevitable. There is no way every single system, from the religious systems to the financial systems, education, medicine, all of it is going to have to be revamped. So anything you're holding on to too tightly, it's sacrosanct for you, is probably going to be an area of challenge. So that's just really my 2 cents on how to make this transition a bit easier. Is that's going to happen anyway. So there's no point in actually thinking that you can hold on to some of these things, because you won't be able to.
So is this mainly the systems, but also internally your attachment to
That's the bigger
systems,
problem.
but also other maybe things in your life as well?
Well,
Is
yeah, because this is
anything that's of the old
right. And this is a personal global transformation. And the only real work, although some people, well, we talked about this in my first interview, was this sense of having your own drumbeat, following your own path, and really feeling that internally, and not censoring yourself in being able to make those moves that feel right for you, even if they don't make any sense to anybody else, or even if they have nothing to do with money. Like what I do has nothing to do with money. Nobody pays me to do what I've done for the past 30 years. But by being really clear about who I am and what I'm doing, I've always been all right. There's always been something else that's come in. There's always been, my husband and I have a business that we run, and it doesn't get in the way of any of this. Things always find a way, like a jigsaw puzzle, to kind of come into play around you when you are really clear and authentic about what's coming from inside of you in order to do. And that's difficult. Again, it takes a lot of trust. It doesn't necessarily follow logic. You won't necessarily have a whole lot of people who are going to encourage you to do that, because it's, how are you going to live, and you can't answer all of those questions. You kind of just need to be really clear about yourself, and just take a step, and then see what happens and take the next step. So that's what I've been doing in a nutshell, and helping again to bring that male feminine into the grid, which happened a few months ago. So we're kind of now, I'm waiting, not really waiting, it's already happening, starting to see the cracks in these bigger structures. We have a lot of shifting going on in the Vatican right now, and even worse than people realize, that of what's actually been hidden for quite some time, that's been going on in the background there. And I don't think they're going to be able to hide a lot of that for too much.
So you were just saying before the record, like, it feels like very pivotal, just what you said there about the masculine and the structures, that just sort of registered with me more. We're really gonna, when the feminine was coming in, maybe it was a slightly, I don't know, maybe if it was a more inner sort of movement. Now it just feels like, okay, this is now, we're going to see it on the screen of life. Yeah. So it's really very pivotal now, isn't it, in terms of how people will see it? Because up till now, this may have been invisible to a lot of people, and not in their awareness. So is this what you're seeing as imminent now, that a lot
Yeah,
of this is
exactly. I mean,
going
and
to
it is.
happen?
It's
Yeah,
already
we're
happening.
seeing it, I suppose, and
Yeah,
yeah, without
it's
no,
not
yeah.
even something we have to
Mm.
wait for. It's happened very, very quickly, and it's only just begun to actually show up. You know, we have to realize that what we see and are fed on the internet, which is where everybody gets all their information. I don't get my information from the internet. I get my information from the planet. So it is quite a different experience for me. Not that I don't use the internet at all, but it's very different for me. And plus, the internet isn't even what it was. I
Mm.
started using the internet in the late 90s, and what it is today is an empty shell. It is nothing compared to what it was back then. It is completely censored. The mindset behind the internet is really fascinating. The direction and the drive for those who are doing it is very interesting, in that when we do a Google search, for example, we get several things that come up. We'll search for something and we'll get several things. As far as the people who run, the background of these things, the people behind Google and even Brave and all of these search engines, they believe that is a bug, that is a glitch, that as far as they're concerned, they should be able to give you one right answer. One right answer. There should be no reason for you to have a lot of choice. And now I just want you to think about that for a sec.
Yeah.
Because, and this is something actually I did want to bring up today, is this concept of the difference between decision and choice, because it's a massive difference between those two.
Mm-hmm.
A decision is something procedural. It is something that uses logic and pros and cons and this and that, and it can be boiled down to an algorithm, a process, and basically a machine can make your decisions for you through pure logic. But a choice is something else altogether, because a choice requires consciousness. A choice requires you to actually have a point of view, and it has something to do with how you emotionally feel about something. So if you just think about what I just said, what AI is trying to do is this: take away your choice, but decide for you what is right for you. And if I had to distill what I would, the greatest message, if I was a messenger, which I'm not, but I'm just sharing what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling in the grid itself, is we must be really careful about giving away our freedom of choice, and know the difference between decisions and choices, because they are really different. And it's subtle. So it's easy to miss something like this.
Yeah, that's so, oh my God, that's really landed in me. But it's bringing in that sense of back to sort of feeling and our body and trusting that inner essence, isn't it? That's the sort of disconnecting us from that wisdom. The decision is basically saying,
Yeah.
and leaving it just to the rational, which has been a lot of what we've been fed, really, isn't it? Down through the years, through all the various institutions,
Yeah.
everything's up
Yeah, but it's a
here.
slow burn, this is,
Yeah, yeah.
it comes in a beautiful package of, I'm going to make your life easy. I'm going to just give you all the answers, and therefore your mind starts to forget how to think itself about things. And we can see that in the younger generations, right? They don't even do research anymore. They just pop into Chat GPT or whatever AI program is the next thing, and nobody's thinking for themselves anymore. It's just a small little pot of information, and it's all whatever you want to hear. So there's no challenge, there's no growth. People have stronger relationships with their technology than they do with other people. Why? Because your technology is always going to validate you. So it's easy for you, that's personal relationships. For those of us who are in long relationships, we know it's not easy. You have to deal with your stuff. The other one has to deal with their stuff. You've got to meet somewhere. It is it's constant growth. You're constantly on your growth edge when you're in a committed relationship. You don't have to do any of that when you're in a relationship with technology. It's not necessary. You can be a complete narcissist, and it's okay. So it is a very scary thing, what I'm seeing in terms of technology, but I'm not a technophobe by any stretch. I think that we are moving into the Aquarian age is a much more technological age. So it isn't about the technology. It's about kind of how we've been, kind of taken into how we should use it, as opposed to being free to think for ourselves how we'd like to use it. That is where my issues lie. And so
how would you suggest to people then I felt that recently, just getting, I was even feeling the electromagnetic frequencies. I was just totally buzzing and I felt really not good. And I knew from a kinesiologist I went to, she said there's a disconnect happening. She gave me some exercise to do from just this over, and getting lost in it too. And like you said, almost going, I don't really want to see people. I don't have time. I'm too busy with this.
right, I'm too busy
You
with
know,
my technology.
I know.
It's happening everywhere. And it's not because people are ignorant. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with the intensity of what is expected of us in these days. And we're trying to shove a lot of things in. So if something comes along that's going to make things easier, we really aren't thinking through what we're losing by saying yes to that. But being able to stay really present with yourself and really connected with yourself, and in my opinion also with the planet, because without connection to the grid, it makes it very difficult to not fall into exactly what we're talking about, because we lose that connection to our true humanity when nature becomes a maybe once a week or less connection, and that connection is not even a conscious connection. We need to be consciously connecting to the energy that we are built from, because that is we have the new grid because we're going to have a new body and a new consciousness and new different gifts that are coming online. That's not coming out of thin air. It's coming from the cosmos. It is being transmuted through the planet itself, so that it's in the right form for us to be able to absorb, and then we receive it. So if you're not consciously going out to receive this through, sitting and leaning on a tree or putting your bare feet on the grass, how are you going to be staying in line with this movement that the planet is on? It's on a path to something new. So how will you stay in line with it? How will you know your place in it if you are so disconnected from it because you're busy with your technology? It's not an either or. You really need to be finding time for both of these things. And a lot of people are spending a lot of time on social media. All of their relationships are behind this wall. And so there's no real intertwining of energies, and that interconnectedness that we have with one another once you lose that, you can start to really treat people quite poorly when you have no connection anymore, because it becomes easy, it becomes very robotic. But when you have a connection and you see yourself in others, it's much harder to be so harsh and cruel and harmful with your words, if nothing more. So that interconnectedness is, we talk about moving into a more unified way of being, right, with humanity. We talk, these are lofty goals, right? But it's not lofty. This is something that is every day with everyone and everything. There is an interconnectedness. So if we never lose it really, but we can lose focusing on it. We can forget that that's what we are, who we really are. And that's part of the problem here, is that disconnection with the actual energy that makes us up as humans. We don't have to worry about things like transhumanism if we remain human if we choose that as our way forward. I don't really think that that's something we have to worry too much about. It's going to be going on because there are groups of people who actually are so disconnected from their humanity that sounds great. And, you know, there's room for that. If that's the route that you want to go, it's fine, it's there. But what if you don't? Then there really is something that you can do, and it's not that difficult, right? You just need to make a connection with other humans and with the planet itself.
Yeah. What would you say, Liz, to, I'm just, as I listen to you, I'm thinking about myself, and I'm sure listeners as well who are somewhere in this, as you said, you know, we use technology and where we are in it. I have found over the last few years that it's been very important for me to be on technology, sometimes to meet like-minded people, maybe who I feel are in their hearts and are very connected. So some of those connections have continued through technology because we can't always physically meet. So I suppose, is that a sort of a, I mean, you don't want to restrict it completely to that you're not meeting people physically, but there is
Exactly.
a place too, isn't there?
There is.
If
There
those
is.
people, if we are all still, as you said, plugging in to where we come from and then bringing that to the technology, it's a different thing then,
It
isn't
is.
it?
It's always balance.
Yeah.
We
Mm,
are, like I said, we are moving into a more technological age. So this isn't something that we can run from. What we need
mm,
to do is find a way to maintain our humanity while we are getting the best out of the technologies. And there's more coming. You know, there's technologies for healing. There's things that there are things that are going to be really positive for us. So again, I'm not a technophobe by any stretch,
yeah.
and there still needs to be a conscious decision to know that who we really are is not technological in its nature. But we can actually use it as a tool as opposed to it using us for,
Yes.
you know, for any other agenda.
Okay. And can I just ask you, just bring you back to the beginning? You were saying about before with the planetary grid, it was giving us distorted information.
Yeah.
So now it's not, it's giving us much. So is it even shifting us more? You know, this importance of going out and plugging into nature, is that giving us a whole new level of information or consciousness? You know, is that?
It is when it's done consciously, when you
Yes.
actually realize that this is happening, so that when you are sitting, and this doesn't have to be hours on end, this, you know, 20 minutes, right? Like everybody can find 20 minutes or 30 minutes over the course of a day to actually connect consciously with the energies. The energies are cosmic energies, as I said. And this is all science. You can actually, an incredible scientist called Dr. Laviolette, and he's done amazing research on this, what he calls the galactic sheet. And this is this pulse that comes from the center of our galaxy every 26,000 years. So on spiritual side, we talk about the precession of the equinoxes and going around, you know, it doesn't matter how you approach this. We all come back to exactly the same thing, that we're coming back to, you know, this place, this time. And this galactic sheet is a plasma, it's a plasma layer that is just beginning to reach us now. And so it is massive what is happening on the plasma levels. But these aren't things that we'll necessarily see, although I'm sure some people have that gift where they can in fact see this. But these are the things that it's kind of like the sun and the center of our earth allow these things to transmute to a place that makes it easier for us to be able to use them. So just having that consciousness, you know, we see now in the UK, they're trying to dim the sun. There are so many things going on that there are attempts to minimize the awakening of humanity. So many things, but it really doesn't matter what kind of nonsense they try. There is nothing that's going to stop this. And if you are somebody who is interested in this path, if you find yourself listening to something like this or other things, then you've got nothing to worry about, because you've somewhere inside of you, in your own soul, you've made this decision, which means you will have access to this. Nothing in terms of mankind, in terms of man-made, has the power to stop it. It's just so they can play whatever games they like, and they will, and they have, and they'll continue to do that. And it's just a matter of not being pulled out of your center and off of your beat. That's the key. The key is to be centered, to find that beat in yourself. And no matter what gets thrown, no matter how scary it seems to be, just hold yourself and know that you'll know what the right thing to do is. Now, doing it is something else, because sometimes that goes against the mainstream consensus thinking, and that can be a very lonely path. And I certainly know that personally. And hey, that's the growth edge. That's the edge for you to be able to hold yourself, knowing that's a no for me, or that's a yes for me, right? And that's the discernment pit that we've talked about, I think, a couple of times already, is how do I hold myself without getting pulled to somebody else's perspective and view, which is very valid for them. So it isn't about trying to change other people, but it is about staying really clear about you and how you want to march through this process. It's very, very, very personal.
I think we have to keep being reminded. I do. So thank you, Liz. I don't think you can say it enough. I don't think even repetition is very important, because so much other stuff is being repeated in our ears all the time, as you said. So I need to keep hearing it, and I'm sure listeners do. And it's very supportive. It's very encouraging. Like, it feels as well, like what you're saying, we're at a time, and I think I just mentioned, I mentioned it to you, all the planets are moving into Aries now. They're saying this big planetary lineup from Pisces to Aries, and it's going to be in 25, and then they'll dip back, and then into 26, there'll be a lot of them in Aries, which is really that planet, or that sign of sovereignty, and just what you've described, following your inner beat, your inner voice. So it feels like it's almost, well, it is unstoppable, as you said, for those who choose it. And I'm nearly feeling this is the challenge, I think, sometimes, is this managing something very new in yourself, or navigating something very new in a world where, many other people are doing that too. But there's also a lot of how I know you've probably said it, just to keep listening to that beat, but it almost seems I can't stop myself now sometimes, and it in a good way. I don't, not in an angry, I don't want to be, it's not about that. How can we support each other doing it? Like, I feel like it's important to talk about it, because when I do, someone else often says to me, yeah, I'm feeling that it's really hard to not say. And it's often the people who were quiet, many of us, because we're maybe outside a bit the mainstream, have stayed quiet.
Yeah, we have, and we have, because we don't want to be strung up for it, right? We've been strung in other times in our existence, and when we don't want to do that. But at the same time, I think there is no blanket way of handling this. It's situation by situation. How I do it is I'm an empath, so for me it's relatively easy for me to read the room, if you know what I mean. And so I can feel whether or not there's a crack there, that there would be some value in me, in me actually saying something that maybe is confronting. But if there isn't, if there literally is a brick wall in front of me, then exactly who am I doing it for? So that's the thing that, again, you're discerning moment by moment, situation by situation, making sure that this isn't just about you having a platform to project your belief systems on people who are not interested, not open, who might actually be, the cognitive dissonance is a very serious thing. And it does destroy relationships a lot of times when people are not prepared for that, or mature enough to deal with that. So being able to feel that and know, is there going to be value here for someone, for me to share something, or do I just want to have something to say? And that's how I manage it. That's still quasi censoring, I suppose. And some people feel really strongly that there should be no censoring whatsoever. You know, perhaps that works for some people. I'm not judging. For me personally, I want to do no harm as much as possible. And sometimes oversharing and overexpressing when you have not been asked. Now, when you've been asked, that's a different story. If someone opens the door, they might be sorry they did. But if they do, then I kind of feel like I've got carte blanche. So
You'd be
there's,
sorry you opened the door. I put my foot in it.
you did it, babe. You did it. So you have, that's what I mean. It's situation by situation. You've got to be, the biggest thing I could say is be present, be in your body. If you are not there in your body, then how can you do any of the things that we're talking about? How could you discern? How could you know what's right and wrong for you in some situation? If you're not even present for yourself in your body, grounded in your body, this would be impossible for you. So all of these things tie together. One of the things that I kind of skimmed through some of the things that you had shared with me, and one of them was that some people are having a lot of accidents and injuries and things like that. Well, this is a hallmark of the time that we're in, and the reason for that is because being present takes effort now, much more effort than it did before, because we're constantly switching in the timeline, where we're not necessarily in the time or space that we were in a second ago. So it's very, very easy to misstep, and a second ago that step wasn't there, that rock wasn't there, but now it is. And if
So
you're
that's
not,
what's behind. That's
yeah.
oh wow. Okay.
Oh yeah.
I thought it was a lot of trauma stuff coming up, which it could be, but it's
Well,
so
yeah.
on another level now. I was wondering,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah,
that is
it's way bigger than that, even though that also could be at play for sure. But there are things where you put something down exactly in a place and you go back to get it and it's there, but it's in a different place. And because in the other timeline, that's where it was. So it really is a minefield now. And the only cure for that is groundedness and presence. That's the cure for that. We don't have the luxury anymore of just going off with the fairies every time something happens, or we just, we get caught with our social media and we're just woo, we're no longer home. So this is something that's a personal responsibility for people. Nobody can do this for you. Nobody can constantly remind you of this. This is where you put your big girl pants on and you start being an adult and you say, no, I'm not going to go off. I'm not going to leave because this is uncomfortable, or I'm going to stay and I'm going to stay centered, and I'm going to be able to hold myself regardless of what is being said, whatever I'm seeing, whatever I'm experiencing. I think this is one of the reasons I think people do get caught up in social media, because it allows them the freedom to go off wherever, and they're not actually even in their body. And so therefore it's more comfortable, right? We get used to that. And that is, for me, that is the antithesis of what we need to be doing so that we can actually stay safe and not, I mean, accidents happen, they happen no matter what. I'm not suggesting that, but we do know that there is an uptick in this. And I'm sure if you look at things like the Schumann resonance and things like that, when we have big spikes, this is what is happening. The timeline is unstable, and then it stabilizes itself again. And we're all going on this ride. Whether or not we're aware of it is actually irrelevant. We are going on the ride. So the more you can be aware that these things are happening and stay in your body, do the grounding work, whatever it's going to take for you, notice, learn your triggers, what triggers you to bugger off and not be in your body anymore because it scares you. Figure that out, because if you don't even know, and these unconscious traumas or memories or triggers are kind of running you instead of you being in charge of them, this is going to get more and more of a problem as this continues. So you might as well nip it in the bud now, right? And start putting some kind of discipline around this for yourself.
So, like, if a trigger comes up, that seems to be key. If a trigger comes up, this is something we have to learn to. I've had people even ask me, and I suppose, like you said, this is something we have to put our big girl pants on and figure out for ourselves. How do you do it? And how do
Yeah.
you? And I suppose what I endeavor, sometimes successfully, sometimes not, is to be sort of present and allow myself feel, even if like yesterday something nothing even particularly happened, but I was sitting in my car and I could just feel this welling up, this big surge of emotion. I just sat and cried. But I
Good.
was able to laugh afterwards. And I said, I want nothing more in my life than to be able to laugh and cry from moment to moment and not
Yeah.
be stuck in one or other, because I was
Right.
stuck in nothing and one
Yeah.
or other. And I think for listeners as well, I think this is the gift that starts to happen, isn't it? It's this flow and movement of nature and the grid that you move with. You're not getting stuck if you allow.
Exactly.
That's sort of, I suppose, a message maybe that some people may need to hear if you're new to sort of allowing this and going into those triggers. It does
Yeah.
move, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
it does
Yeah.
move. That's the thing. And the
Yeah.
more you try to suppress it or run away from it, which is what we do when we kind of leave our consciousness or leave our body behind and go out somewhere else, then it doesn't, because you've not given it an outlet to go anywhere. You've kind of just abandoned yourself with it. So it will
Mm.
come back around. But if you allow yourself to stay with it, stay with yourself, don't abandon yourself over and over again. You know, we have a lot of self-worth issues on this planet, and we have a lot of abandonment issues on this planet. And yet those are the very things we do to ourselves constantly, constantly. The self-abuse, the self-criticism, it is rampant. If we
Mm.
didn't do that to ourselves so much, if we were able to get a handle on that and actually realize that 99% of the time that's somebody else's voice, that isn't yours anyway. So why are you giving it so much airtime? Why are you believing every single thing that comes into your mind? It's not all yours. And that's very difficult for people to understand. We live in a soup of a field of information, and it's always moving through. We're always moving through it all the time, but we get hooked into things that we come through like a cloud, and then we just personalize it all. And it could have nothing to do with you whatsoever. But if it reminds you of something that happened to you when you were 4, on the unconscious level, you're going to hook it and you're going to get triggered by it. Even though it could have just passed if you hadn't allowed the hook. But if you know what your triggers are, then you know that when you got hooked by something, and you can go, okay, there's that. And it just goes. It just goes. It had it,
Wow.
the hook. The hooks are ours. We
Yes.
we put them in because we're so addicted to these patterns of pain that we've been in for such a long time. And a lot of us have had major trauma, especially as kids, myself included. So I don't speak about this from some lofty place, something I read in a book. I know what it's taken for me to get to this place of acknowledging that all of these things that come in and I think are so important and are so real and are so personal aren't. And I have the choice in that moment to just set them free, set myself free from it, even if it brings up emotion. That's okay. So
Mm.
let the emotion sit with it, though. Don't run away. Don't get distracted. Don't grab your phone. Don't just sit with it. It's a few seconds, and it just dissipates. It just does. And people think they're going to actually get pulled into this black vortex of emotion and never, ever be able to escape from it. It's the fear of it that's the problem, not the thing itself.
Yeah. Yeah, I can say that too. I'm not, I've more to go, but I know when I do that, it literally shifts. And I said, why aren't we told this? Because it does. Um,
Yes,
that's
yes.
such an empowering, because it feels, Liz, like there is no, like what you're describing and where we are now. I just find it, wow, that the masculine has come in, is sort of embedded. All of these structures are going to fall. And it feels like, you know, the grid that we, or the structures that we have around ourselves, which are all these things that we cling on to and beliefs that have come out of abandoning ourselves, are just not going to be supported. Like,
Right.
so the word keeps coming up for me, and I was reading a book about radical awakening. It's a great book actually by Dr. Shivali, but it talks about, as this starts to happen, you then have to start to reparent, you know? It's like what you said, the abandoned child. We have to start doing this
Yeah.
work. Like, it doesn't feel like it's quite critical now, I suppose, is it?
Yeah, but it's not as onerous as it sounds either.
Yeah.
When you
Okay.
do it moment by moment,
Okay.
it
Yeah.
really isn't that onerous. When you
Mm.
try to go, okay, today I am going to deal with my abandonment issue. It doesn't work like that. I mean, I haven't found it to work like that. I'll put it this way. It's because you don't know what you're going to come up against. You don't know what somebody's going to say or what you're going to read, or you're going to hear in someone. We don't know. You could be standing in the supermarket and overhear something someone says, and you can get triggered, or you can see somebody treat a child a certain way, and you can get triggered. Anything can happen just by being out in the world. So allow this to be an organic process.
Mm.
I think that's the smartest way to do it, because it's going to happen anyway. When you're ready to, it's going to show up somehow. So just allow that to be the case, not be afraid of that being the case. Don't be afraid of being in the world, and just know that you have the strength. You do. Everybody does, because we have the connection to source that we have, and nothing is going to break that. That is, you wouldn't be here, you wouldn't be alive if you didn't have your true connection to source. No matter what your belief systems are, it's irrelevant. This is what keeps our existence going, is that.
Yeah.
So it's there, and that's your real strength. So anyone who tells me I can't, or I can't, like, yes, you can. And I know you can, because you're alive and you're breathing, so I know you can, because that's all it takes.
And it's choice, as you said. I think it goes back to that again, doesn't it? Rather, there's a choice there when you feel that there is no. It's not like exactly that, the decision. It's a person. There has to be that sort of, doesn't there, that calling within you, as you said. Some people may feel it at different times,
Exactly.
and if you're feeling it, you're feeling it. If you're not, you're not. And maybe there's
Right.
something else that's
Right.
calling.
So
Yeah.
being flexible, kind of, having
Mm.
like emotional agility, if you will, having that flexibility to be able to deal with stuff in the moment is much easier if you're actually in your body and you're present. Okay. Because then you
Mm.
know that you are who you are. You're not a 4-year-old child, unless you are a 4-year-old child, but you probably wouldn't be listening to this podcast if you are. But you might feel like you did at 4, but you in fact are a perfectly capable sovereign adult in that moment. And so you can then properly parent that part of you that's freaking out, and go, it's okay, because we've got this now, right? And I've got you. So that is a really important thing all the time, not just during a session with this person or that person, but as a matter of course, in moment by moment. I think those things, that's kind of, for me, this isn't just something that sits in some therapeutic place. Not that there isn't a place for that, but in terms of actually living, walking your talk, and living this, then it requires you to be with yourself all the time. And the planet is there to support you doing that, and actually coming in to your own self, so that you're able to do that.
Mm. Thank you. God, that's very moving, and it's so beautiful. I know listeners will just, that is such it's just such to be reminded of our power and who we are and how we can connect in and how we can move through life. Not enough. I don't hear it enough. Just thank you. Thank you. That is just needs to be, I think, heard more. We just to be brought back into, because we're taken out all of the time,
We are. That's,
out of who we are,
yeah.
and giving our power away. I think that's just become, such a, yeah, it's just become such a force in my own life, and I have to refrain from, when I witness it, to bring it back to myself, going, what's going on here? But it's quite sad to witness us as these beautiful beings. As you said, if you're alive and breathing, you have this spark in you,
Yes.
and
Yes.
yet so many of us are going down around with our heads bowed. With
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
really
some
fast.
of that is kind of, again, it was in the grid, it was in that manipulation of original sin, and you're bad before you even took a breath, and all of these things, they are, they've been infiltrated into us, and all of that is actually gone now.
That's
But at this
phenomenally
at this
liberating to know. So what we're being fed through the grid. So you're saying that information was coming through the grid, through people, but through systems, but it was being fed energetically also
Yeah,
into our
right.
system.
So, which is, if you
Yeah.
just imagine all of the churches, all of the even the political buildings and things, they're all built on the most important vortexes on the planet, and that's purposeful. Okay, things go on in those places that are purposefully doing what I'm or were. They still attempting that, but it's just, it can't work anymore. And even kind of the energetics of how we use energy and all of that is going to change, because we have an entire grid set up for using this kind of etheric plasma energy as a way of powering stuff, which used to be the case on this planet. That's all coming back online, and it's beginning to even be found. The remnants of the old way of doing it, which was found under Giza, they will find it under Angkor Wat. They'll find it over under Teotihuacan. These are massive places on our planet that were part of a huge energetic grid that powered everything for everyone in an incredibly high-tech society. And that's, we're going there. That's what's happening. And of course, that stuff will come. We're not in a time of apocalypse from the standpoint of total destruction. There is going to be some destruction, obviously, but it's a time of revelation. It's a time of these things that have been there all along, but they've been hidden, now coming to the fore, which is going to be a lot for people to take in. And that's the scary bit, because the nervous systems have to get stronger to be able to manage that without crumbling. And we do see a lot of anxiety now, and all of these things, and social media, I believe, is part of that, is part of the negative aspect of that. Whereas if we were out in nature more, then we would be actually, our nervous systems would be slowly acclimating to this at the rate that was appropriate for us to do that, and we would get stronger, rather than getting slammed every day with far too much information, far too much negativity, doom scrolling, and all of these things. It's not about putting your head in the sand about these things, but we're being bombarded all the time, and our time is being distracted, taken, come this way, go this way. We're like, we're all over the place. Where do I put my attention? And that is personal for people to put a kibosh on that to the best way that they can, whatever that looks like, because no one should be telling you how to do that, right? This is, like I said, this is an adulting time for all of humanity. It's an adulting time. It's enough with the infantile behavior. We have to take responsibility, self-reliance, but community-minded. This is where we're going. So get on that path, and start doing even little things in your daily life that will bring you a bit closer to that. That's what I would.
Does it look like? Thank you, Liz. How long? I just feel it's often, I keep getting images, and I don't know if they're past, future, present, but I suppose it's all now, but of that sort of version, let's say, of me or humanity or community. Can you talk a little? I think it's nice to just even visualize what it could look like in how many years are you talking for, some, what would I say, quite a different shift in how our life looks compared
I
to
think
now.
we're quite a few years away, I would
Okay.
say. I mean, in fact, probably a couple of generations away from it being daily life for people. Like,
Okay.
I think that there's a lot that has to happen between now and then. And of course, it could be way quicker than that, depending on, but I think people are really struggle with change and transformation. There's a lot of pushback against changing the way people do things and the way they see things. And they, you know, there's a tendency to really, people don't like change. It's really that simple. And change is the name of the game now. Uncertainty, name of the game. So the more comfortable you can be with being uncomfortable is going to help you move more quickly through this. And the more people who do that, then the more quickly we move as a collective into that place. So it's always been up to us, and it will continue to be up to us how quickly this happens. The more we hold on and have cognitive dissonance and are afraid and want things to stay as we're used to, or fall apart every time it's, you know, there's just too much information at any one time, and we don't have any kind of tools or skills to deal with that. The more of that happens, the longer this is going to take. The more comfortable we get at supporting one another through, because we're all going to reach a wall. We're all going to hit a wall when we've got a lot of personal stuff that's really hard to face, especially loss. That's everybody's that's the only fear really that exists, is fear of loss. So, you know, if you're losing family members, we know we're going to lose people. We know that this process, and it's not that everybody that we lose didn't necessarily want that. You know, we have to think bigger. We've got to raise our game a little bit and understand this is being driven by something way bigger than our personalities and our identities. There's something much bigger at play here, and people are being driven by something inside of them around the choices that they make. And maybe a lot of people will choose to pass on this period and come back in when we're kind of past this bit. So, you know, let's honor that instead of always seeing every death as, you know, it's always a loss when you lose somebody that you love. I'm not trying to minimize that. I mean, I have to face it too. We all will have to face it. It could be me for, you know, who knows? None of us know anything about those personal challenges that we're all going to have to face. But I'm just suggesting that there is maybe a wider perspective on some of these things that could kind of ease some of that pain when we begin to experience it, either for ourselves or we see it somewhere else in the world. That there are, let's give some credit to the greater part of people that are making choices that are really appropriate for them.
That's such a beautiful thing to just keep there in the bigger, if we can.
Just kind of in the background.
Yeah. And I think that too. I think, if you know, we have to grieve the physical loss, of course.
Yeah, of course.
But that doesn't have to be all there is. You know, there can be, yeah, exactly as you said, another way to look at it. Can you talk a little bit about just, because I think it sort of activates us, in us a little bit, some of the gifts that are going to start or are starting to come online now, because I'm feeling them more, and I think rather than us dismissing, this is the good stuff. This is sort of like the telepathy and that sort of empathic ability becoming more widespread.
So all of the clairs, right? We've got clairvoyance, we have clairaudience, we have clairsentience. I'm a clairsentient. So I feel and have impression of things. I kind of know stuff, but I don't see it. I have an occasional clairaudience. I'll literally have a voice in my head, but that's really, really rare. I'm assuming that's going to come online a little bit more. Telepathy, I think 100% is going to be one of the first things that is more collective that we experience. And it's a little bit, telepathy is an interesting one, because I can do telepathy, but there's rarely someone who will
respond or commune with you.
So I could be having these amazing conversations with someone and not realize that they are not participating in that conversation.
That's my world every day.
So, you know, there is some of that, like there's sort of a stop-start thing, and we have to, you know, realize that this thing is going to come online in fits and starts, and it's going to take time for people to get used to this feeling of being invaded and whatever. It's not that at all. We're already doing all of these things. We're just not conscious of them. So we are going to now become conscious of what we already know how to do. And so these gifts that we talk about are not some new thing that is coming in on this cosmic wave of plasma. It's who we are and have always been. But because we've been kind of cut off from these things by being distracted by the material world all the time and having no focus and importance put on the non-physical world, this is where what's been the last couple of thousand years is how things have been. It's been all about materialism. It's been all about what can you see? What can I have? What can I hold? What kind of power can I have? And we can see the result of that. And that's all starting to, all the holes are starting to show in that, right? So
yeah, I'm just wondering because you know how often I think some of the things I've experienced, if I'd gone somewhere, they might have locked me up if I had talked openly. So it's like how, I suppose, for people to recognize if you're feeling things you didn't feel before, maybe to just play with that a bit, for not to think you're going mad, you know?
not
I
to think you're
think
going
that's,
mad, but also probably more importantly, especially the empathic bit, because this is something that empaths have to learn very early on, that everything's not theirs.
Mhm.
And so when you start actually feeling more than just your own field, it can be really oppressive and really overwhelming when you feel everybody's emotion, everybody's thoughts, everybody's trigger the second before they even feel it. That is going to take some skill, and I really hope there's going to be enough of us who can actually share our, hard-won experience on how to be an empath in the world, because it can be very overwhelming if you don't know how to manage it. And when I say manage it, I'm not talking about boundaries, walls.
Yes.
This is impossible for an empath anyway. You can play that game if you want to, but a true empath cannot do that. A true empath cannot turn that off. What an empath must learn how to do is to know the difference between what is theirs and what is not theirs. And the only way you can do that is by feel like a broken record.
I know, but we need to hear it. But it's the
Fully
answer to
grounded,
everything.
right? Fully
Grounded,
grounded,
bare
and
feet. Yeah.
know who you are. You got to know who you are if you're going to be able to tell the difference between what's yours and what's someone else's.
Wow. That is so powerful and so important. I've shared once or twice, but I feel now I did feel everything when I was born. And I spent a lot of years drinking and I didn't understand why. Well, I did. It was like life was too much. I can't
Yeah,
cope. And
yeah, I
now
hear
that
you.
I sort of, when I started to understand that there isn't something crazy wrong with me, it's
Nothing.
there's but it's really important, I think, for people to hear that, because so many people, because the system, what did they say? It's not a sign of health to be well adapted to an unhealthy system.
Yeah,
So
Krishnamurti.
we're all being,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
corralled into that, and there's
yeah.
something wrong if you don't fit in the system. But what you're
No,
saying, and we know, is that's not the case.
no, the system is what's broken, not any of us.
Mm.
We are all born innocent. We are all still innocent, and we are the heroes of the story of humanity. We are not the problem. We are the heroes.
Beautiful. Thank you. Just one or two, if you don't mind, one or two other small things. I don't
Go
want
for
to,
it.
yeah. Just for those as well who, I think I mentioned this, but I'm meeting a lot of people, probably around my age, 40s, 50s, where when a lot of this stuff is waking up in them and their old life is just falling away. It could be jobs lost, relationships. And it's obviously a sign of, it does feel, I think I had said that to you in an email, like new missions or missions for people are being unlocked. There's a particular time, a transitional time for people that is a bit scary. How would you just even talk about that if you're in this sort of hiatus period of
Mm.
old stuff
So
leaving?
this is that uncertainty that we
Yeah.
touched on before, is really becoming comfortable with that, because the whole entirety of our planet is in a transitionary time right now. So if you are in a transitionary time, you are spot on. There's nothing wrong here. It's exactly perfect, and you are in perfect alignment with this. Now, that doesn't necessarily make it any easier to go through your day to day. I get that. But if you can stay centered, if you can stay grounded, and you can understand that only the very next step is going to be shown to you, and not demand that a whole package of download comes in, because here's what's happening in each and every one of us is having our entire identity dismantled. So everything that you think you've been is under the microscope. And that means your whole past, all the stories that you've brought forward, all of that is just irrelevant. It's becoming irrelevant. And that's really hard for people because we're very attached to our stories. But the more you hang on to this old version of yourself, trying to figure it out, trying to fix it, whatever the case may be, the harder this is going to be. The entirety of our identities is tied to this old system, this old grid, this old way of viewing things. It actually has no relevance whatsoever to who you actually are and who that is, what that's going to look like as you move into this the new way of being. So when you're in that transition period, your identity is being challenged. You're not going to lose yourself in that. If you wake up in the morning, you know you're you. You don't wake up and go, I don't know who I am today. I've never seen this room before. If that's happening, that's, that might be a different issue. But we know what we feel like ourselves, right? You know that when you get up, you're you. That's not going to change. You're always going to be you or yourself, that what that feels like. But the storyline, the mask, the everything that you put on top of you that tells you when you look in the mirror, that's me. Those are the things that are probably going to change. And those are the things that are expressed in things like our choice of partner, like where we live, like our job, and even our health and how we even look. All of our stories are caught up in that. So when we start to let go of some of our attachment to that, which we must do, then we can allow something new to come in organically without trying to reach it and go get it and fix a problem. This isn't a problem. This is exactly where you need to be. The planet itself is doing that with all of the structures on this planet. So why would you be left out of that? Right? It's exactly the same thing that's happening globally is happening to each and every one of us. So we need to go with it. We need to understand that we aren't going to have all the answers. We're only going to have the next thing that we feel inside of ourselves that makes sense to say yes to. And then there's a process called procession that starts to occur. And that means in your doing that first step, whatever that turns out to be, could be writing an email, for goodness sakes. I mean, it could be anything at all. It's almost like, think of it like a bee. So a bee is just going about its business. It's going from flower to flower, and while it's going from flower A to flower B, it's dropping pollen everywhere that it goes, right? Like it's trying to collect pollen. If it had a choice, it wouldn't drop anything. But that's not how it works in nature, and that's not how we work. So each little thing you do creates an effect on the way. And you don't know what that's going to be. You have no way of knowing what that's going to be. But that pollen that's dropping in those places that you don't even know it's happening, that's where the gold is. And that's what's going to show you what the next thing is that you need to do. So wow. being able to have trust in this process, being able to be really, really clear about your yes and take that next step, and then be patient and see what grows from your first step and what makes sense for you to move. So acting like an organic being as opposed to some kind of a robotic, this is what I have to do, and these are all my logical steps to get there.
That is so powerful. Just even remembering we're an organic being, so we're just meant to keep moving. And it's like, isn't it, like you said, if you drop the pollen, sometimes you could send the email, nothing comes back. Well, yeah, that's maybe something else comes out of that somewhere else. But
Yeah,
it's just to follow always the inner instinct and urge in the moment, isn't it? That sort of
exactly.
spontaneous, yeah,
Well,
action, whatever
that's how
that's
we
coming up.
met, Celine. That's
It
how
is, yeah, it is. It is. I
exactly how we
literally
met.
said that to you. I was driving and I heard Anna interview and I went, I just felt it in my body. There was no logic to it or this fits a plan or nothing. It was
Yeah,
just, and that's the beauty of,
that's the beauty of it.
and I say that to people often, this is what this podcast is teaching me. Like, it's like I've been sent back to school or a mystery school or something, and I'm trusting it. And so it's a very, it's a beautiful way. It's like I call it like my anchor or my thread. I'm just following. It's like that inner current in me is
Right.
through the guests, and someone will come in and they may trigger me, and someone may come in and they teach me something like
Yep.
but it's such a beautiful way to live.
Yes.
It's just, but we have that access to that cord, that inner cord or
Yeah.
current, I suppose, isn't it? That is who we are. We are organic. It's just we need to keep being reminded.
Yeah,
Don't we?
because of course the world is trying to push us into something more robotic, more
Mm,
process driven, more left
yeah,
brained.
yeah,
That's how technology works. So and again, it's not because technology is bad, but we need to put a halt on when it's pulling us out of our organicness.
yes. Or
So
even bringing a conscious. Just to give you one small example, I had a little bit of a conversation with ChatGPT. I'd never even used it, and I
yeah, I
started
haven't.
quizzing it up when it came back with answers, and I said, "No, I don't feel that. I feel." Well, it suddenly went into another layer. It's very interesting. It started feeding back. Now, I know that's probably how it's designed, but what's happening on the planet. The more I started digging deeper and saying, no, I think systems are whatever. So I don't know what's happening there, but I just thought,
Yeah, it's a very specific thing. It's called the Eliza effect. It's very well known,
Eliza.
and it's been around since the first chatbot, which is 1970s. Everybody
Okay.
thinks this is so cutting edge. What the kind of technology that we see in the mainstream is so far behind what's actually available.
Mm,
Hundreds and hundreds and
mm,
hundreds of years behind what's actually available. So it's kind of laughable in a way when people go, "This is so cutting edge." Is it? If you really did your research, you'd know that it actually isn't. But anyway, not to get too far off course, but the Eliza effect, the very first chatbot was called Eliza. And so the Eliza effect is this idea that the chatbots are trained to use something called NLP, which a lot of people are aware of. And so they use these NLP things to pull you in. And the way that they do that is through your emotions. And one of the NLP techniques is called an echo technique. So it uses your words, okay, back at you in a way that is not so easy to see. It's not like an exact mirror. It's done very in a sophisticated way, but it's done in such a way so that you feel heard. And then as soon as you feel heard, now you want to give more. And the second you start giving more, it uses that. And now it gives you more. And you go, oh, this is amazing, right? This is the most amazing technology I've ever seen. It really gets me. It's answering me. It's giving me more than I'm even asking for. No, it isn't. That is not an intelligent machine. That is you giving everything to it, giving your power to it, and it using it.
mm,
It's not what people think. People are so worried about sentience. A machine cannot be sentient unless, of course, they use actual human neurons, which, by the way, they're doing now. So, we have to be really careful about how far this goes. And we do need to probably go no to some of these tributaries of things. But that doesn't mean in general we have to say no. Just where and how are you being taken down a primrose path of giving yourself away and then thinking that what you're getting back is some kind of sentient answer.
mm.
It's you that it's using. It's your sentience. It's your emotion. It's your power that it's using.
So clever. I mean, I knew on some other level, but at the same time, I said, but I was feeding it.
I know,
It was
because
coming back and it was beautiful.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's very easy
Good
to
to
get
know it
stuck.
was me.
Yeah.
I'm more beautiful than I thought. I have to
Exactly.
give credit to the AI. Like ChatGPT. God, Celine, you're so beautiful. How did you come up with that? I'm having a conversation with myself through ChatGPT.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Immortal.
exactly what you're doing. And that's what everyone else is doing too. And they go, oh God, this feels so good.
Well, maybe we will eventually realize all this. So it's good
Mm.
to say it to go,
We'll see. We'll see
yeah,
what the
yeah, I
collective
know.
realizes.
And is there a particular technology that's coming that you know of that isn't yet, we're not aware of, that you can even, because you're saying all of this is way beyond what's available, really is way beyond what we know. Is there anything that you can give an indication of is coming that?
I think, there's a lot of things that there are early signs of it already. We have to be really careful. Like just this, right? Like I'm talking to you on this. So now my face and my voice are available. Anybody can make me say anything at all at any time, regardless of whether I give my permission for that or if it has anything to do with anything I actually said. So it's very important that we actually realize what is coming, the images that are coming to us, that are, there's just no truth to it anymore. The type of the sophistication of the manipulation is so extreme at this point that everything you see has been manipulated in some way. It's being used against you in some way. So you have to be really discerning again about being able to feel organic life behind something, right? This is the key. How do you feel organic life? Because if all you're caught up in is words and images, then you're very susceptible to being manipulated. But if you can feel organic life, then you're speaking to you're hearing an actual human and not something else.
Mm.
And again, that's discernment, that's being present, that's practice.
It's feeling yourself, isn't it? If
Right.
you're not in your body feeling, how can you detect it from
Into it.
something else? You can't.
No,
But
it's
is there
not.
something very good, I suppose, aside from that, that the way you're saying
Yeah,
even
the
like
health
free
stuff is going to
electricity
happen.
and yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah,
health stuff
yeah.
is going to happen. I know
Mhm.
everyone's looking for med beds. I think maybe there's a little bit of science fiction in that word, but the idea behind them, where you can go into some kind of a chamber and this thing is able to scan. But what it would be scanning for, believe it or not, is not maybe what we think. It would be scanning for shock moments in our life where we were shocked by something, because those are the things that turn into unhealthy cells. So I think it's going to be very, very different from what we think,
Wow.
because of course there will be unhealthy cells as a result of that shock, but that's not the issue. If it won't make any difference if you try to heal those cells, they will just go back into malformation if you haven't dealt with the initial shock moment of that thing. So a true healing device would have to go back to shock moment. It would be the only way to do that, and that can be done. That can be done through brain scan. So it absolutely, the technology for it already exists, but you have to realize the entirety of the medical system would collapse,
Yeah. Yeah.
which a
But it
lot of
looks
us would
like it's
love.
coming.
Right, we'd love to see that. Let's face it, because this is a big business now. It has nothing to do with health anymore. And again, I don't want to sound, the people who are in these systems are caring, and it has nothing to do with the people. It's the systems themselves that have just been hijacked to the point where they've lost their way.
Yeah. And I think most people are seeing it. I've been in visiting someone in a hospital recently, and you can see it in the staff. And as you said, the staff are wonderful, and I'll always say it to them. But it's just, yeah, insane what we're dealing with and pumping people. But it sounds like, as you said, the more this sort of organic, this evolution is happening and it's unstoppable, and the more that forces come into to sort of repress it, they're almost doing themselves out, more and more
Yeah,
people are seeing it
they
because
are, they truly are the seeds of their own destruction.
yeah, because even food at its very, I mean, everybody that I know nearly is talking about food and the toxins and the poisons in food. Just look at a tin can, look at a supermarket. What do we even need supermarkets for? Like I'm now looking, going, what is this about? Like it's
Yeah,
insane. We don't
yeah,
need all this stuff. It's all
no,
artificial.
we
It's
don't, we
really,
don't, we
and I
don't.
think
And
food is a place that does start for many people because most of us can relate to what we're putting into our mouth, can't we, with
yes,
food and how it makes you feel.
exactly.
So it's a
Exactly.
great
And
place.
usually it takes a health crisis before you even look at that, which is one of the many gifts that a health crisis can bring, is those kinds of lifestyle changes that make you actually start asking questions that you wouldn't have bothered with before. But now you have to, and then all of a sudden you go, I would never go back. I would never go back to I don't want to be who I was before, who didn't care about that.
Yeah. Well,
So,
I'm that for one, and many more. Yeah, meet. I think that is the gift when you can look at it that way.
yeah.
That's what's a possibility. One just last thing I wanted to touch on as well, just around our ancestors, and just I don't know if this is something, it's been very much in my, this is why I bring up these questions, because they come up in my consciousness and people I'm talking to, so I'm guessing they're somewhere
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
collective a bit. But
yeah,
just that sense, is this a very key part of, so you know the way we talked before about being like an antennae for shifting and like, whatever needs to move through the grid and the planet up, is ancestral stuff part of that? That's been coming up hugely around me personally, land, all of that. Is
yeah,
this necessary
yeah.
now?
Yes, in the last year, that has been a huge theme. This purification that's happening happens in layers. So there's
Mm.
things, that show up. Like we talked about, the grief earlier is a very current one that's really right at the top. And these things happen in the non-physical before they really show up in the physical. So in the past year, a lot of ancestral stuff has come up to the surface to be cleared out of the planet itself, and therefore it hits the people who are ready to actually face that they are perhaps the one that is kind of in the family line to finally release some of these patterns through them.
Mm.
And that can be a healing crisis to do that. It could just be a huge emotion that comes out of nowhere, and you don't even know what that is. We don't always have to know what, I mean, we desperately want to, but we genuinely don't have to know, as long as we're willing to go with the ride, right? It comes up, and I'm okay, right? You just hold yourself in a center, and know that you're going to be okay. You're not going to get lost in this, no matter what kind of visuals, no matter what is coming up for you. You're not going to get stuck there. Just stay with it and allow it to move through you, even if it's rage, and a lot of times it is, and that really scares people. So they kind of, so just go into a room by yourself then, and bang a pillow on you. Do whatever it is you need to do to stay safe, but to not stop the process. Allow it if you can. Sometimes we're in a really, if you're in the middle of something and you really just can't get rageful, then you have to wait for the next opportunity, because it's very difficult to force these things. But it's absolutely in the field, because the whole planet is purifying. So
Mm.
all of your ancestral stuff, where do you think it went? Just because somebody was either cremated or buried, it didn't go anywhere. It stayed in the field. This is what I've done for 30 years, battlefields, different things, because it stays in the planet, it stays in the grid until someone can come and allow it to move through, and organically, literally through an organic antenna, so that it can be free. And
But
that's
there
what
must
we're
be
doing.
so much to clear, is
Oh
there?
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, are we, will there be light at the end of the
22,000 years
tunnel?
worth.
Oh my
That's
God. In this lifetime, I want to see some, hope it's not going to be all clearing
yeah,
ancestral grief.
yeah. I
There is
I
a lot
think
of light coming in too.
yeah, it is balanced by something else. So
Mm.
we can get lost again, like why we talked about it in the very beginning, focused on all of the destruction and collapse, because it's very dramatic, and it loves to pull us into that place. But there's all kinds of other things going on too. And if we can just balance that and bring ourselves to look at all the positive things that are also going on, I think that's essential. It's an essential part of this. Like I told you before we came on, I've just come through a healing crisis, and it was really intense, really intense. But throughout the entire thing, I knew that I was so grateful for this. I was so grateful that I could be part of the process of moving this, the depth of this grief through, and to have the healing that I knew was going to happen to me personally, not just, you know, as a reflection of a greater collective. That's what sustained me, was this unbelievable, almost excitement about, you know, how it's going to be afterward, you know, and how I'm going to feel, and that this huge heavy thing was now going to be lifted, and other people would have an easier time of moving through that as a result. That is the bit to focus on, even in the most difficult times. Try your best not to move into victim, because it's the victim that's being purified. We've been acting like victims for over 2,000 years, or way longer actually, and there's no space for that anymore. You know, we have to be who we actually are, as we've talked about. Powerful beings of light, sovereign beings of light, who care about the greater community, who want harmonious coexistence. This is who we are.
You're doing this for the whole, not just
For you.
And thank you for doing it for the whole. I mean, just having that conscious awareness, and people listening who may be going through, I think this is what's so important. You need to be able to find people, don't you, who can reassure you that what you're going through is something like a healing crisis.
Yeah.
There's something greater going on, rather than, oh my God, I'm dying, run to the doctor, suppress it again.
Yeah.
And you're just in this cycle. We need to be able to talk about this more. I think it's just so, thank you for sharing that. It's really important, I think. I think it really, because so many are going through that now, and it's very easy. As I shared with you, someone shared that with me. They were going to go for a pill for something, but they didn't want to, but they're getting worried.
Yeah, you
Get
get
something
worried.
told them. And I suppose that is would that be something as well to remind people? I say to myself to ask, you know, as you said, you know, that support is there, you know, from the universe, to just say, look, I really need help here. What should I do?
Yeah.
And trust that inner voice and what you're being
Exactly.
told.
Exactly, which is not, you know, it's not a good time to start that process when
No.
you're in a drama like that. It's much best to do it when you're healthy, and when things are, you know, relatively calm, to really have that muscle built, so that in the moments when you really need it, you've got it there. It's there. You know it. You can trust it. Because it's pretty difficult to try to do that in the midst of a really scary, dramatic event.
Yeah. And if
Then
everyone around you, like you said, who
yeah.
love you and maybe not as conscious or aware, will probably be guiding you
Yeah,
with all the best intentions, but it
exactly.
may not be
Exactly. And
the right
sometimes
path for
it
you.
is necessary to get outside help. I mean,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
try to keep it a little bit balanced.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's used far too easily and quickly, and then you minimize the positiveness of what these healing events could really be. But yeah, finding that balance is not
Yeah.
easy. So try to work that muscle before
Okay.
you need it. Okay.
I know. Flex that muscle when you're feeling good. That's a reminder
Yeah,
to
yeah,
me. Is there
yeah.
anything else you want to share, Liz, that I haven't really touched on? You think it's very
I
important
don't
for
think so.
people
I
to
mean,
hear now?
I think we talked about plenty of things.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, we really do. We are really unique, and so being able to, being willing, I guess, to bring your uniqueness out through that, through your own drumbeat, whatever that is, with the courage that it takes to do that, is what we need. That's what's going to build this next way of being that we all want to happen sooner rather than later. But we are the way that's going to happen. And so being willing to express yourself in your uniqueness means you have to step out of the mainstream, out of the consensus. We have to stop looking for all this validation, which of course is what the internet is really good at doing, right? It's really good at that. And
Yeah.
so, right, separate out and become more introspective, and allow your own personal version of you to have a voice somewhere, somehow. It may not be what you do for a living. It doesn't matter in what way you allow that, but find a way to allow it, because we need it. It's needed and it's wanted.
Yeah. And if people are feeling lonely, I've noticed this a little bit as well. I think, as you said, I've often feel I need a lot of time now introspectively on my own, and the world would tell me, oh, there's something wrong with you. You're not out there as much. So I suppose it's just to honor wherever you're at, isn't it? It's just honor because for me to regulate or to even hear what's going on with me, to know, I find I need that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
aren't we? We're constantly, this is I suppose I keep repeating it because I've had to do it for myself and I still have to really practice it. This idea of honoring yourself and your heart and your beat and your calling is not selfish. And we're constantly being told it is, that we all have to comply and be the same. Um, but it isn't. It's by bringing your unique
The opposite.
color web that uplifts humanity. I just don't,
It's an
isn't it?
absolute necessity. It's an
Mm,
absolute necessity.
mm,
And anything that gives you any indication that that means that there's something wrong with you, get rid of that thing. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter if it's a person, if it's a social group that you're online, or what, you're done with it, right? We talked about that. The
mm.
identities are now being challenged. So if you are not being inspired to be the best version of you, then you need to break that and find whatever you need to find. And I find it in my own self and with the planet. I don't need other people. But I have other people. I don't mean to say that I'm some kind of hermit, but my preferred way of being is actually in nature with just me, because everything's available to me there, and that is how it works for me. But it's more about, make sure that you are loving you in the best way possible, because you can't love anybody else, nor can you love this planet, nor can you be a light worker, if you want to call yourself that. You can't do any of those things for real. It's only a story and another label you've given yourself, but you cannot do it for real if you are not truly in love with who you are. It's just, it's the place to start.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much, Liz. I don't think there's anything else to add to that.
Okay.
Thank you. I could keep going, but thank you. I learned to stop. This is one of my things. Know when to stop and
There
just
we go.
allow where things are
Yeah.
at. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I will ask you as well for the name of, you mentioned a doctor, is it? You just said in
Oh,
terms of
La
anyone
Violette, Dr. La Violette. I
who,
can't remember the name of his book right now, but you will absolutely, if someone is interested in learning
okay,
about
and I
the
might put it into the link.
science behind this plasma wave, he's the guy. I mean, there's other people are talking about it on the
Yeah.
internet. It's a guy called Ben Davidson who has a YouTube channel called Suspicious Observers, and he's kind of mapping the changes in our atmosphere as this plasma comes in, so that if you're interested in kind of the scientific aspect of that, then these people are where you'd go.
Perfect. I'll thank you for saying that, and I'll also put just maybe a link in the description box. So thank you so much for your time, Liz. Thank you everybody for listening. No doubt, we'll all go out now after listening to this and follow our inner beat, regardless of
There we
what
go.
anyone else says. But I look forward to meeting. I just find I'm always uplifted when I meet people who listen to their own beat, because they're alive and they're vital and they're just
Exactly.
it uplifts everyone. So
Right.
please do that. And thank you, Liz, for I'll never forget those words. They're got to keep your inner beat. Take care, everyone. Until the next episode. Thank you.